My name is Essie, and I am 67 years old. I spent 35 years teaching third graders how to read, how to dream, and how to believe in themselves. I raised my son Derek in a small house that my husband Harold built with his own 2 hands. I thought I knew what love looked like. I thought I knew what family meant. But 3 weeks ago, I was lying in a hospital bed after hip replacement surgery, waiting for my son to pick me up. He never came. And when I finally made it home on my own, I discovered that the locks had been changed, and my own daughter-in-law screamed at me to get out. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you believe that mothers deserve respect and love, hit that like button right now. And subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story that might just change the way you see the world. Now let me take you back to where this all began. I need to tell you about my family so you can understand how deeply this betrayal cut into my heart. My husband Harold passed away 12 years ago from lung cancer. He was a carpenter, a man who believed that everything worth having was worth building with your own hands. We bought our little plot of land in Ohio when Derek was just 5 years old, and Harold spent every weekend for 3 years turning lumber and nails into a home. I remember watching him work in the summer heat, sweat dripping down his forehead, while little Derek handed him tools and asked 1,000 questions. That house was not just walls and a roof. It was a monument to our love, to our dreams, to the life we wanted to give our only child. When Harold got sick, Derek was 15 years old. The cancer moved faster than any of us expected. In those final months, I watched my husband shrink from a strong, capable man into someone who could barely lift his head from the pillow. He held my hand the night before he died and made me promise 2 things. First, he said, "Take care of yourself. Do not let anyone push you around." Second, he said, "Make sure Derek grows up to be a good man." I kissed his forehead and swore I would do both. After Harold was gone, I threw myself into raising Derek alone. I worked double shifts at the school tutoring kids after hours for extra money, just to make sure Derek could have the same opportunities as the other children. I skipped meals so he could have new shoes. I wore the same winter coat for 11 years so he could join the soccer team. Every sacrifice felt worth it when I saw him smile when I watched him graduate high school, with honors when he got accepted into college on a partial scholarship. Derek was a good boy. At least, that is what I believed for most of his life. He called me every Sunday from college. He came home for holidays. He helped me fix the leaky faucet and clean the gutters every spring. When he got his first real job as an accountant at a mid-sized firm in Cleveland, he drove 2 hours every other weekend just to have dinner with me. He would sit at the kitchen table where he used to do his homework, and we would talk for hours about everything and nothing. Those were good years. Then Margot came into the picture 4 years ago. Derek met her at a company party. She worked in real estate, selling luxury homes to people with more money than sense. The first time he brought her to meet me, she was wearing a silk blouse and heels that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She smiled a lot, but her eyes never quite matched her mouth. She complimented my cooking while barely touching her food. She praised the house while glancing around like she was calculating its resale value. I wanted to like her because Derek clearly adored her. He looked at her the way Harold used to look at me, with that particular kind of love that makes you willing to do anything for another person. So, I ignored the little warning signs. I told myself that everyone deserves a chance, that first impressions can be misleading, that love sees things that others cannot see. They got married after dating for only a year. It was a small ceremony at the courthouse because Margot said big weddings were a waste of money. Derek paid for everything anyway, including the honeymoon to the Bahamas that I was not invited to join. I smiled through it all, telling myself that this was how life was supposed to work. Children grow up. They find partners. They build their own lives. My job was to step back and let them flourish. 2 years ago, Margot convinced Derek that they should move into my house. She framed it as a practical decision. "Why pay rent," she said, "when your mother has all that space?" It would be temporary, she promised, just until they saved enough for a down payment on their own place. I agreed because I loved my son and I wanted to help him succeed. I moved out of the master bedroom that Harold and I had shared for 30 years and relocated to the small guest room on the first floor. I told myself it was fine. I told myself it was temporary. But nothing about Margot ever seemed temporary. She rearranged my furniture. She replaced my curtains with modern blinds that blocked out the morning sun I loved. She complained about the creaky floorboards and the outdated kitchen appliances. She talked about renovations like she was planning for a house she already owned. And slowly, so slowly, that I almost did not notice it happening, she started pushing me out of my own life. 2 months before my hip surgery, Margot started dropping hints about assisted living facilities. She left brochures on the kitchen counter with names like Sunset Gardens and Golden Years Manor. She talked about how much work it must be for a woman my age to maintain such a big house. She wondered out loud if I might be happier somewhere with round-the-clock care and activities for seniors. Every comment was wrapped in concern, but underneath the sweetness, I could taste something bitter. Derek never said a word when Margot talked like this. He just sat there, eyes fixed on his phone or his plate, pretending not to hear. The son who used to defend me against playground bullies, who once got into a fistfight because another boy called me a name, now could not even meet my eyes when his wife suggested I should be shipped off to a nursing home. I found out about the real estate calls by accident. I came home early from my book club one Tuesday afternoon and heard Margot on the phone in the living room. She was talking to someone about property values in our neighborhood, asking how much a house like ours might sell for if it was updated and staged properly. She mentioned that the current owner was elderly and would probably be moving out soon. She laughed at something the person said, and the sound of it made my blood run cold. I backed out of the house quietly that day and sat in my car for an hour, trying to make sense of what I had heard. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately. Part of me wanted to believe I had misunderstood. Part of me just wanted to pretend it never happened. In the end, I chose to say nothing. I told myself that maybe she was just curious, that maybe it did not mean what I thought it meant. I was wrong. The day I went into the hospital for my surgery, Derek drove me to the medical center himself. He carried my overnight bag and walked me to the check-in desk. He hugged me and told me everything would be fine, that he would be back to pick me up as soon as the doctor said I could go home. 3 weeks, I said. The doctor says I need 3 weeks to recover enough for discharge. He nodded and squeezed my hand. 3 weeks, Mom. I will be here. Those were the last kind words my son said to me for a very long time. The morning of my discharge, I woke up before dawn. The sky outside my hospital window was still purple, the first hints of orange just starting to peek over the horizon. I had been counting down the days, crossing them off on a little calendar the nurses gave me. 3 weeks of physical therapy, of bland hospital food, of sleeping in a bed that was not my own. I was ready to go home. The surgery had gone well better than expected, according to my doctor. He said I was one of the most determined patients he had ever worked with, that my willingness to push through the pain during physical therapy had sped up my recovery significantly. I thought about Harold then, about his words the night before he died. Take care of yourself. Do not let anyone push you around. I had taken care of myself. I had worked hard to get better. And now, I was going home. The nurses helped me shower and get dressed. They packed up my belongings, the few books I had brought, the photos of Harold and Derek that sat on my bedside table, the flowers that Dorothy had sent when she heard about my surgery. By 9 a.m, I was sitting in a wheelchair in the hospital lobby. My discharge papers signed, my medications in a little bag on my lap, my heart full of anticipation. Derek was supposed to arrive at 9:30. I had called him the night before to confirm, and he had said yes. "Mom, I will be there." His voice sounded strange, distant somehow, but I attributed it to stress. He had a lot on his plate with work, and Margot and everything else. I told myself he was just tired. 9:30 came and went. I watched the automatic doors slide open and closed, families coming and going, patients being picked up by loved ones. A little girl ran past me clutching a balloon, her father chasing after her with a laugh. An elderly man in a wheelchair similar to mine was wheeled out by his wife, who leaned down to kiss his cheek before helping him into their car. I smiled at each happy scene, sure that my own happy scene was just moments away. By 10 o'clock, I started calling Derek. His phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I left a message trying to keep my voice light. "Hey honey, just checking in. I am ready and waiting whenever you get here. No rush. I love you." By 10:30, I had called 6 more times. No answer. I texted him a simple message: "I am at the hospital waiting. Are you on your way?" The message showed as delivered, but not read. At 11, I called Margot. Her phone also went to voicemail. I did not leave a message. By noon, the nurses were starting to give me concerned looks. One of them, a kind woman named Patricia, who had been with me through most of my recovery, came over and knelt beside my wheelchair. "Mrs. Essie," she said gently, "is there someone else we can call for you? Another family member maybe? Or a friend?" I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment. "My son is just running late," I said, though the words tasted like lies in my mouth. "You know how traffic can be. He will be here any minute." Patricia nodded, but her eyes were sad. She had seen this before, I realized. She had watched other elderly patients sit in this same lobby, waiting for children who never came. The thought made my stomach turn. By 1 o'clock, I had called Derek 23 times. I had sent 12 text messages. I had called Margot 8 times. Nothing. No response, no explanation, no apology. Just silence. I sat there in my wheelchair watching the afternoon sun shift across the lobby floor, and I felt something inside me begin to crack. Not break, not yet, but crack like ice on a pond at the end of winter. Those first thin lines that warn you the surface is not as solid as it looks. At 2:30, Patricia came back with another nurse and a clipboard. "Mrs. Essie," she said, "we need to discuss your options. We cannot keep you here indefinitely, but we also cannot discharge you without ensuring you have safe transportation and someone to care for you at home." I straightened my spine, remembering Harold's words again. "Take care of yourself." I looked at Patricia and said, "I need you to call me a car rental service. One that can deliver a vehicle here to the hospital." Patricia looked surprised, but did not argue. 20 minutes later, a representative from a rental company arrived with keys to a modest sedan. The rental agent was a young man named Marcus, who helped me out of my wheelchair and into the driver's seat with more kindness than my own son had shown me in months. He adjusted the mirrors for me and asked if I was sure I was okay to drive. I told him I had been driving since before he was born, and he laughed and wished me well. The drive home took 45 minutes. I knew the route by heart, every turn, every landmark, every pothole that the city never seemed to fix. I passed the grocery store where I had shopped for 40 years. I passed the elementary school where I had taught 3 generations of children. I passed the church where Harold and I were married, where Derek was baptized, where Harold's funeral was held. This was my town, my life, my history. Every mile brought me closer to home. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that something was very wrong. Derek had never forgotten to pick me up from anything, not a doctor's appointment, not a car repair, not anything. Even when he was in college 4 hours away, he had always answered my calls within an hour or two. This silence was different. This silence felt deliberate. I pulled onto my street at 3:45 in the afternoon. The houses looked the same as always, modest but well-kept American flags on porches, children's bicycles in driveways. My house was at the end of the cul-de-sac, the one with the blue shutters that Harold had painted the summer before he died. I could see it from the corner, looking exactly as it always did. But as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. There was a new welcome mat on the front porch, one I had never seen before. The garden gnome that had stood by the front steps for 20 years was gone. And the curtains in the living room window were different, a modern gray pattern that I would never have chosen. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Maybe Margot had done some redecorating while I was gone, I told myself. Maybe she wanted to surprise me. But even as I formed the thought, I knew it was not true. I grabbed my cane from the passenger seat and slowly made my way out of the car. My new hip ached with each step, but I had been trained to push through pain. I walked up the path that Harold had laid brick by brick, up the 3 steps that he had built with his own hands, and I stood in front of the door that had welcomed me home for 35 years. I reached into my purse and pulled out my key ring. The same keys I had carried for decades, the house key, the mailbox key, the key to the garden shed. I found the house key by touch, the one with the little nick in the metal from when Derek had accidentally dropped my keys down a storm drain when he was 10. I inserted it into the lock and turned. Nothing happened. The key did not fit. I tried again, thinking maybe I had the wrong key. Maybe I was confused from the medication. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no matter how many times I tried, no matter how I angled the key, it would not go in. The lock had been changed. I stood there on my own front porch, the porch where Derek had taken his first steps, where Harold had kissed me every evening when he came home from work, and I could not get into my own house. I knocked on the door. No answer. I rang the doorbell, the one that played the first few notes of Amazing Grace, a song that Harold had loved. Still no answer. I called out my son's name. Derek, Derek, are you home? I called out for Margot. Please, someone open the door. Nothing. Silence. The house sat there like a stranger, cold and unwelcoming. And then movement. A curtain on the second floor twitched the window of the master bedroom, my bedroom, the room where I had slept beside my husband for 30 years. A face appeared in the glass. It was Margot. She stared down at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Gone was the fake sweetness, the practiced smile, the pretense of caring. In its place was something cold, something triumphant, something cruel. She looked at me the way you might look at a stray dog that wandered onto your property. I called up to her, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay calm. Margot, what is going on? Why is the lock changed? Where is Derek? She opened the window just a few inches enough for her voice to carry down to where I stood. You need to leave, she said, her tone flat and final. You do not live here anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward, nearly losing my balance on the porch steps. I gripped my cane with both hands, trying to steady myself, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. What are you talking about? I called back. This is my house. I have the deed. Harold left it to me when he died. This is my home. Margot laughed, and the sound was like broken glass. Not anymore, she said. Derek signed the papers weeks ago. Everything is in our names now. You have no claim to this property. If you do not leave right now, I am calling the police and having you arrested for trespassing. I felt the world tilt around me. Derek signed papers. What papers? When how could he sign away a house that was not his to sign away? The deed was in my name. Harold's will had been crystal clear. The house belonged to me until the day I died, and only then would it pass to Derek. Those were Harold's wishes. Those were my legal rights. I need to talk to Derek, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Please, Margot. Whatever is happening here, it is a misunderstanding. Just let me talk to my son. Margot's eyes narrowed. He does not want to talk to you, she said. He has finally seen the truth about what kind of mother you really are. Selfish, controlling, holding on to this house like a prison warden. He is done with you, Essie. We are both done with you. Before I could respond, she slammed the window shut. I stood there on the porch, my legs shaking my heart, pounding my mind, racing in circles that led nowhere good. I do not know how long I stood there. It might have been 5 minutes. It might have been 30. The sun was getting lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the lawn that I had mowed for 35 years, the garden beds that I had planted with my own hands, the rose bushes that Harold had given me for our 20th anniversary. Then the front door opened. Derek stood in the doorway, but he did not step outside. He kept one hand on the doorframe as if ready to slam it shut at any moment. He looked different, somehow smaller than I remembered, or maybe it was just that I was seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Mom, he said, and his voice was flat empty of any emotion I could recognize. You need to go. Derek. I reached out toward him, but he flinched back. Derek, please tell me what is happening. Why did you change the locks? Why is Margot saying I do not live here anymore? This is my house. Your father built this house. You grew up here. He shook his head slowly, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere over my shoulder, refusing to meet my gaze. Margot explained everything to me, he said. You have been holding on to this house, holding on to me for too long. It is not healthy. The best thing for everyone is if you find somewhere else to live. A retirement community, maybe somewhere with people your own age. I felt tears spilling down my cheeks, but I was too stunned to wipe them away. Derek, I am your mother. I raised you alone after your father died. I sacrificed everything for you. How can you do this to me? For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt maybe, or guilt, or some remnant of the boy I had raised. But then it was gone, replaced by that terrible blankness. Margot helped me understand, he said. She helped me see how you have been manipulating me all these years, using guilt to keep me close, making me feel obligated to take care of you. That is not love, Mom. That is control. And I cannot live like that anymore. I opened my mouth to argue, to plead, to say anything that might reach the son I knew was still in there somewhere. But before I could speak, Derek stepped back and closed the door. I heard the deadbolt slide into place, the sound of it echoing in the evening air like a gunshot. I do not remember walking back to the rental car. I do not remember starting the engine or pulling out of the driveway. The next thing I knew, I was parked on the side of the road 3 blocks away, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. My whole body shook with grief and rage and disbelief. My son, my only child, the baby I had nursed and rocked and sung to sleep, had just thrown me out of my own home like I was nothing. I sat there until the sun went down and the streetlights flickered on. I had nowhere to go. My closest relatives lived states away. Most of my friends from the school had moved to Florida or Arizona after retirement. I was alone in a way I had not been since the day Harold died. Then I remembered Dorothy. Dorothy Harper had been my colleague at Jefferson Elementary for 22 years. We had started teaching in the same year, shared a classroom wall, eaten lunch together almost every day. When Harold died, she was the one who organized the meal train, who sat with me through the darkest nights, who reminded me that I still had reasons to keep living. We had drifted apart somewhat after I retired, the way friends sometimes do when the daily contact disappears. But I still had her number in my phone, and I still believed she would help me if I asked. I called her with shaking hands, not even sure what I would say. She answered on the second ring. "Essie, is that you?" Her voice was warm, surprised, a little confused. "Are you okay? You sound upset." I tried to explain, but the words came out in fragments, broken sentences interrupted by sobs. Hospital. Derek. Locks changed. Thrown out. Nowhere to go. Dorothy did not hesitate. "Where are you right now?" she asked. "Tell me exactly where you are. I am coming to get you." 15 minutes later, her old Honda Accord pulled up behind my rental car. Dorothy was out of the driver's seat before I even had a chance to unbuckle my seatbelt. She opened my door, took one look at my tear-streaked face, and wrapped me in the kind of hug I had not felt in years. "You are coming home with me," she said. "No arguments. We will figure this out together. But first you need food and rest and a safe place to sleep. Come on." I was too exhausted to argue. I followed her to her car and let her drive me to her little house on the other side of town. It was modest, a 2-bedroom ranch with a garden full of tomato plants and a porch swing that creaked in the evening breeze. Nothing like the home I had just lost, but at that moment, it looked like heaven. Dorothy made me soup from a can and toast with butter, simple food that I ate without really tasting. She listened as I told her everything, starting with Margot's arrival in our lives and ending with Derek closing the door in my face. She did not interrupt, did not offer platitudes, did not tell me that everything would be okay. She just listened, really listened, the way only true friends know how to do. When I finished, Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Essie, what they did to you is not just cruel. It is illegal. You cannot sign away someone else's property. If Derek put his name on papers claiming that house belongs to him, and Margot, someone committed fraud." I shook my head wearily. "I do not want to fight Dorothy. I just want my son back. I want to understand why he is doing this." Dorothy reached across the table and took my hand. "I know," she said gently. "But sometimes fighting is how you get people back. Sometimes you have to stand up and show them that you are not someone who can be pushed around." "Did Harold ever tell you to be a doormat?" The question hit me like cold water. "No," I whispered. "He told me to take care of myself. He told me not to let anyone bully me." "Then honor his memory," Dorothy said. "Fight for what is yours. Not just the house. Fight for your dignity. Fight for the truth. Fight for the son you raised, the one who is buried somewhere under whatever lies that woman has been feeding him." That night, I lay on Dorothy's sofa, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. I thought about Harold, about his hands rough from years of carpentry, about his voice telling me stories in the dark. I thought about Derek as a baby, as a little boy, as a teenager, as a man. I thought about all the years I had given to that family, all the love I had poured into that house, all the sacrifices I had made without ever asking for anything in return. And somewhere in the deepest part of the night, something inside me shifted. The grief did not disappear. The pain did not fade. But alongside them, something else began to grow. Determination. Resolve. The decision that I would not let this be the end of my story. When the morning light started filtering through the curtains, I had made my choice. I was going to fight. Dorothy had a friend who worked at a law firm downtown, and she made a call first thing in the morning. By 10 o'clock, I was sitting in the office of Margaret Sullivan, a 55-year-old attorney who specialized in estate law and family disputes. She had silver hair, cut short, sharp blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a handshake that told you she was not someone to be trifled with. "Tell me everything," she said, leaning back in her leather chair. Start from the beginning and do not leave anything out. So I told her. I told her about Harold, about the house, about the will that left everything to me. I told her about Derek and Margot, about the brochures for nursing homes, about the real estate calls I had overheard. I told her about the hospital, the changed locks, the conversation on the porch. I handed over every document I had managed to grab before I went to the hospital. The deed to the house, a copy of Harold's will, my tax returns for the past 10 years. Margaret reviewed everything carefully, making notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished talking, she set down her pen and looked at me with an expression that was equal parts anger and determination. "Essie," she said, "there is no legal way for your son to have transferred ownership of that house without your knowledge and consent. If documents exist that claim otherwise, they are forgeries. That is a felony. Whoever created those documents and whoever knowingly used them could face serious criminal charges in addition to civil liability." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "Are you saying Derek might go to jail?" Margaret shook her head slowly. "It depends on how involved he was," she said. "If he signed papers without reading them, if he was manipulated or misled, he might be able to claim he did not know what he was doing. But someone committed fraud, and that someone needs to be held accountable. My guess, based on what you have told me, is that Margot is the primary architect of this scheme. But we will not know for sure until we investigate." Over the next few days, Margaret worked with a speed and efficiency that left me breathless. She filed a police report on my behalf, documenting the fraudulent transfer of property. She contacted the county recorder's office and obtained copies of the documents that had been filed, claiming to transfer ownership of my house to Derek and Margot. She brought in a handwriting expert who confirmed within hours that my signature on those documents was a forgery. The police investigation moved even faster than I expected. It turned out that Margot had a history that Derek knew nothing about. She had been married once before to a 68-year-old widower in Pennsylvania who owned a farm and significant savings. That marriage had ended when the man's children discovered that Margot had been slowly draining his bank accounts and had filed papers to transfer the farm into her name alone. She fled before charges could be filed, changed her last name, and moved to Ohio, where she eventually met my son. The detectives also discovered that Margot had opened multiple credit cards in Derek's name without his knowledge, running up debts of over $80,000. She had been making minimum payments using money she secretly transferred from Derek's savings account, keeping the whole scheme hidden behind a wall of lies and manipulation. There were emails too recovered from a laptop that Margot had not managed to destroy. Correspondence with a man in Florida, someone she called her exit plan. The emails detailed their intention to sell my house, collect the money, and disappear together to somewhere without an extradition treaty. Derek was never supposed to be part of her future. He was just a tool she used to get what she wanted. When the police arrived at my house with a warrant, Margot was packing suitcases. They found plane tickets in her purse, one-way to Costa Rica departure scheduled for the following morning. She screamed and cursed as they put her in handcuffs, blaming Derek, blaming me, blaming everyone except herself. Derek was at work when Margot was arrested. The police brought him to the station for questioning, and he spent 4 hours in an interrogation room, slowly coming to understand the full scope of how thoroughly he had been deceived. He was not charged with any crime. The investigators determined that he had been a victim of Margot's manipulation, as much as I had been signing documents without reading them, because he trusted his wife, never imagining that she would use that trust to destroy his family. But even without criminal charges, Derek's life began to fall apart in ways that Margot had never anticipated. His company learned of the investigation and, worried about liability and reputation, terminated his employment immediately. His credit score collapsed when the fraudulent accounts were discovered. The colleagues who used to invite him to lunch stopped calling. The friends who used to come over for barbecues found excuses to be busy. In the span of 1 week, Derek lost his wife, his job, his financial stability, and his reputation. He moved out of my house and into a small studio apartment on the wrong side of town, the kind of place with bars on the windows and neighbors who shouted at each other through thin walls. He was 42 years old, starting over from nothing, forced to confront every choice he had made that led him to this point. 3 weeks after Margot's arrest, Derek came to find me at Dorothy's house. I was sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, when a familiar car pulled into the driveway. My heart clenched when I saw him get out, looking thinner than before. His clothes wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed from what I assumed was lack of sleep. He walked up the path, slowly each step, hesitant, like a child approaching a parent after doing something wrong. When he reached the porch, he did not come up the steps. He just stood there on the grass, looking up at me with an expression I had not seen since he was a little boy who had broken a window with his baseball and was afraid to tell me. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked on the single syllable. I did not respond. I wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted him to find the words himself without me making it easier for him. He stood there in silence for a long moment, his hands hanging at his sides. Then slowly, he lowered himself to his knees on Dorothy's front lawn, the damp grass soaking through his pants, and he started to cry. "I am sorry," he said, the words coming out between sobs. "I am so sorry. I do not know how I let this happen. I do not know how I could have treated you like that. You are my mother. You raised me by yourself. You gave up everything for me, and I threw you away like garbage because a woman I barely knew told me to." I watched him cry, this grown man who used to be my baby boy, and I felt something shift inside my chest. The anger was still there, the hurt, the betrayal. But underneath all of that, something else stirred. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the possibility of forgiveness somewhere far down the road. Derek kept talking, the words pouring out of him like water from a broken dam. "She told me things, Mom. She told me that you were toxic, that you were controlling, that you were trying to ruin our marriage. She made me believe that everything you did was manipulation. Every time you called, she said you were checking up on me. Every time you asked us to visit, she said you were guilt-tripping me. She twisted everything until I could not see straight anymore. I finally spoke, my voice steadier than I expected. And you believed her. You believed a woman you had known for a few years over the mother who raised you for your entire life." He flinched like I had slapped him. "I know," he whispered. "I know. There is no excuse. There is nothing I can say that makes it okay. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right if you will let me." I was quiet for a long time, watching the last light of the sun fade behind the rooftops across the street. Dorothy had come to the window at some point, and I could feel her watching us, ready to intervene if I needed her. "Derek," I finally said, "do you know how long I waited for you at that hospital?" He shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the ground. "I waited for 6 hours, I said. "I called you over 20 times. I left messages. I sent texts. I sat in that lobby with my new hip aching and my heart breaking, and I made excuses for you. I told the nurses you were probably stuck in traffic. I told myself there had to be an explanation, because I could not imagine my son, the boy I raised, the child I sacrificed everything for, could simply forget about me." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and painful. Derek did not try to defend himself. He did not offer excuses. He just knelt there on the grass and let the truth wash over him. "I did not forget," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I could say I forgot. But Margot told me not to go. She said you were being discharged to a rehabilitation facility, that the hospital was taking care of your transportation. She told me she had confirmed everything. And I believed her. I did not even call to check. I just believed her. Because it was easier, I said. Because believing her meant you did not have to deal with me. He nodded slowly, accepting the accusation without protest. Yes, he said, because it was easier, and I hate myself for it. We sat in silence as the streetlights flickered on around us, the darkness settling in like a blanket. I thought about all the years I had loved this man, from the moment I felt him kick inside my belly to this very second, watching him kneel broken on a stranger's lawn. I thought about Harold, about what he would say if he could see us now. I thought about the choice I had to make, whether to let the pain define the rest of my life or whether to find another path. I am not ready to forgive you, I said finally. What you did broke something inside me, Derek. Something that may never fully heal. But I am not going to spend whatever years I have left drowning in bitterness. That is not who your father raised me to be. That is not who I want to be. Derek looked up at me, hope and fear warring in his eyes. What does that mean? It means I am giving you a chance, I said. Not forgiveness, not trust. Just a chance. You are going to have to earn your way back into my life, one action at a time. You are going to have to prove through what you do not, what you say, that you have changed, that you will never let anyone turn you against your family again. He nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, I will do anything. I will do whatever it takes. You are going to get a job? I continued. Any job, even if it means flipping burgers or stocking shelves. You are going to pay off those debts that Margot left in your name, even if it takes you 10 years. You are going to see a therapist, someone who can help you understand how you got to this point and how to make sure it never happens again. And you are going to show up every week, not because I ask you to, but because you want to. Can you do all of that? Yes, Mom, I swear I can. I looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of the manipulation I had learned to recognize in Margot. All I saw was a broken man trying desperately to find his way back to who he used to be. Okay then, I said. You can start by getting up off your knees. The neighbors are starting to stare. For the first time in weeks, Derek almost smiled. 6 months have passed since that evening on Dorothy's porch. I am back in my house now, the house that Harold built, the house where I raised my son, the house I very nearly lost forever. The locks have been changed again, back to the ones I chose, and this time, I am the only one with a key. The first few weeks were hard. I walked through rooms that did not feel like mine anymore, past furniture that had been rearranged, and walls that had been repainted without my permission. I found myself looking for things that Margot had thrown away, the crocheted blanket. My grandmother made the collection of coffee mugs I had accumulated over 40 years of teaching, the framed photos of Harold that used to line the hallway. Some things were in boxes in the garage. Some things were gone forever. But slowly, gradually, I began to reclaim my space. I painted the living room back to the soft yellow that Harold always liked. I planted new flowers in the garden beds, daffodils and tulips and roses that will bloom in the spring. I bought a new welcome mat, one with a picture of a cardinal on it, because Harold always said cardinals were visits from loved ones who had passed on. I also started going to a support group, something Dorothy suggested when she noticed I was having trouble sleeping. It meets every Tuesday evening at the community center, a circle of chairs filled with people who have been betrayed by family members they trusted. Husbands whose wives cleaned out the savings account. Parents whose children forged their signatures on legal documents. Grandparents who were tricked into signing away their homes. We sit together and share our stories, and somehow the sharing makes the burden lighter. I have made new friends there. There is Walter, a 73-year-old retired firefighter, whose son convinced him to invest his entire pension in a fake business scheme. There is Ramona, a 65-year-old nurse, whose daughter stole her identity and ruined her credit. There is Benjamin, an 80-year-old widower, whose caregiver manipulated him into changing his will. We look out for each other now, check in with phone calls and coffee dates, remind each other that we are not defined by the worst things that happen to us. Derek has kept his promises, at least so far. He found a job at a hardware store working 40 hours a week for not much more than minimum wage. It is not the corporate accounting position he used to have, but he says he does not mind. The work is honest, he told me, and his co-workers treat him like a regular person, not like someone whose wife turned out to be a con artist. He is slowly chipping away at the mountain of debt Margot left behind, sending payments every month, even when it means eating ramen for dinner. He comes to see me every Sunday afternoon, just like he used to when he was younger. We cook dinner together, usually something simple like spaghetti or roast chicken. We talk about his week, about my garden, about the weather, about nothing in particular. We do not talk about Margot. There does not seem to be any point. She pleaded guilty to multiple felonies and is serving time in a prison 3 states away. That chapter of our lives is closed. Our relationship is not what it used to be. I do not know if it ever will be. There is a wariness between us now, a careful politeness that was not there before. Sometimes I catch him looking at me with an expression that might be guilt or might be grief, and I do not know what to say to make it better. Sometimes I find myself flinching when he reaches out to touch my hand, my body remembering the betrayal, even when my mind has chosen to move forward. But we are trying. Both of us, in our own imperfect ways, are trying to rebuild something from the wreckage. I spend a lot of time thinking about what I have learned from all of this. About the importance of standing up for yourself, even when the person hurting you is someone you love. About the danger of ignoring warning signs because you want to believe the best in people. About the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. How you can let go of anger without letting someone back into your life. How you can open a door without walking through it. Most of all, I have learned that you cannot control what other people do. You cannot make someone love you the way you deserve to be loved. You cannot prevent betrayal through sheer force of devotion. All you can control is how you respond when the people you trust let you down. I chose to respond by fighting for myself. I chose to seek justice instead of accepting defeat. I chose to rebuild my life instead of drowning in despair. And while the scars will probably never fully disappear, I have learned to carry them as proof of survival rather than marks of shame. If you are watching this story and you recognize something of your own life in it, I want you to know that you are not alone. There are people out there who have been where you are and who have come out the other side. There are resources, legal and emotional and practical, that can help you reclaim what has been taken from you. You do not have to suffer in silence. You do not have to accept being treated like you do not matter. And if you are lucky enough to have a family that loves you truly, that supports you unconditionally, hold on to them. Tell them what they mean to you. Do not wait until tragedy strikes to appreciate the people who show up for you, day after day, asking for nothing in return. I am sitting on my porch as I finish telling you this story, watching the sun set over the neighborhood where I have lived for 35 years. The chair I am sitting in was Harold's favorite, a wooden rocker that he built himself the year before he died. I can almost feel him here with me, his presence lingering in the creak of the wood, in the warmth of the evening air, in the peace that has finally returned to my heart. Life goes on. It always does. And I am still here, stronger than I was before, wiser than I wanted to become, grateful for every new day I get to spend in the home that my husband built and my son could not take away. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had to stand up against someone you loved in order to protect yourself? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this video touched your heart or made you think about your own relationships, please give it a like. Share it with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone. Subscribe to this channel so we can continue sharing stories that matter. Together, we can remind each other that even in the darkest moments, there is always a path back to the light. Thank you for spending this time with me today. May you be surrounded by people who truly love you, and may you always have the courage to love yourself enough to walk away from those who do not. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, you deserve respect, you deserve honesty, and you deserve a home where you are always welcome. Until next time, this is Essie signing off.